Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the People Processes Show. I appreciate your patience. I know I have a weird audio setup at the moment. I hope I don't sound too bad on the podcast itself. Had some issues with microphones, and we're going to try to get this recorded 2 hours late. Today, we're going to be talking about a Tennessee Valley Authority action that has prompted Trump to attack and issue an executive order on August 3rd that cracks down on H-1B visas. So let's talk about the executive order, and then we're going to go back and talk about kind of what prompted this. On August 3rd, President Trump issued an executive order requiring federal agencies that use government contractors to scrutinize contracts awarded in fiscal years 2018 and 2019 to determine whether contractors and subcontractors use temporary foreign labor for the contracts performed in the United States, and if so, to determine the nature of the work performed by the temporary foreign labor on those contracts, and whether the opportunities for U.S. workers were affected by this hiring. It also says, take a look at the potential effects on national security caused by those hirings. Contractors and subcontractors performed in foreign countries services that were previously performed in the U.S., and if so, whether opportunities for the U.S. worker were affected by such offshoring, whether affected U.S. workers were eligible for assistance under the Trade Adjustment Assistance Program, authorized by the Trade Act of 1974, and any potential effects on national security caused by that offshoring. Among other things, the executive order also directs the Secretary of Labor and Homeland Security to take action within 45 days of August 3rd to protect U.S. workers from any adverse effects on wages and working conditions caused by the employment of H-1B visa holders at sites. So, what happened? Well, before I tell you, take a minute, like, subscribe, follow. If you're listening on the podcast, please drop a review, 5 stars, 4 stars, whatever you feel. It makes such a huge difference. If you're on YouTube, drop a comment, thumbs up, subscribe. Makes a big difference to us, and as we're trying to get these videos off the ground. I very much appreciate it. Now, what happened? Well, the executive order follows the federally owned Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA, announcement that it's going to outsource 20% of its technology jobs to companies based in foreign countries, a move that the White House says could cause more than 200 highly skilled American tech workers in Tennessee to lose their jobs to low-wage foreign workers hired on temporary work visas. The TVA's decision is also expected to cost the local economy tens of millions of dollars over the next 5 years. White House policy. According to the executive order, it's the policy of the executive branch to create opportunities for U.S. workers to compete for jobs, including jobs created through federal contracts. In fact, especially so. These opportunities, particularly in regions where the federal government remains the largest employer, like many TVA installations, are especially critical during the economic dislocation caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. According to Trump, quote, when employers trade American jobs for temporary foreign labor, for example, it reduces opportunities for United States workers in a manner inconsistent with the role the guest worker programs are meant to play in the nation's economy. That's from the executive order itself. Each agency head that enters into contracts must assess any negative impact of contractors and subcontractors' temporary foreign labor hiring practices or broader offshoring practices on the economy and efficiency of the federal procurement and on national security. The executive order directs each agency head to propose action, if necessary, and as appropriate and consistent with applicable law, to improve the economy and efficiency of federal procurement and to protect the national security. Agency heads also must, in coordination with the Director of the Office of Personnel Management, review the agency's employment policies to assess compliance with that executive order. This is a big deal. I know many of the listeners on here are small business owners, and you don't necessarily see what this comes from. Well, H-1B visas and outsourcing, or offshoring as we call it, there's a lot of different places where that makes a lot of sense and some places where it doesn't. But whenever you're actually replacing United States labor with either fully offshored or temporary H-1B visas, which is basically where you bring someone in from another country to do the job, there are a lot of hoops you have to jump through. And with this order, Trump is making it clear that starting with the people he can control, federal contractors, they're going to be cracking down on that a lot. The executive order requires each agency head to submit a report within 120 days to the Director of Office and of Management and Budget, we call it the OMB, summarizing the results of the required reviews, recommending, if necessary, corrective actions that may be taken by the agency and timeframes to implement those actions, proposing any presidential actions that may be appropriate, and within 45 days after the issuance of the Trump's EO, the Secretaries of Labor and Homeland Security must take action as appropriate and consistent with the laws to protect U.S. workers from any adverse effects on wages and working conditions caused by the employment of H-1B visa holders at job sites, including at third-party job sites. So those of you who are federal contractors, that applies to you. This is basically saying that there's going to be new H-1B guidance. In the fact sheet about the executive order, the White House said that the Department of Labor will finalize guidance to prevent H-1B employers from moving H-1B workers to other employers' job sites to displace American workers. Notably, on August 3rd, the Department of Labor also announced the signing of an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding. If you don't know what those are, that allows intergovernmental agency cooperation. This one is between the Department of Labor and the Department of Homeland Security, and that establishes processes by which the USCIS, which is the Customs and Immigration Services, will refer suspected employer violations within the H-1B program to the Department of Labor that the USCIS identifies in the course of adjudicating petitions. Petitions are a source of information never previously accessed by the Department of Labor for enforcement purposes, and it's going to allow them to conduct administrative and targeted site visits. So, the USCIS is going to share information on H-1B violations with the Department of Labor, and the Department of Labor is going to share it with the Department of Homeland Security. So under these departments, they're going to access and share information about immigrant and non-immigrant petition records, data contained in the Office of Foreign Labor certifications. There's going to be a lot of different pieces, all these different databases that are going to be put together. And so employer violations under this MOA will allow the DOL and the USCIS to identify all sorts of violations related to this. This could even affect I-9 provisions. Basically, the government's getting together, and all these individual departments that used to deal with different parts, from Customs and Immigration, Department of Labor, Department of Homeland Security, are now going to be sharing data so as to crack down on the economic effects of outsourcing or offshoring or temporarily bringing in foreign labor. There's going to be new Secretary certified investigators and investigations. The Secretary's power to personally initiate investigations of potential violation is a unique authority under the Immigration and Nationalizations Act, the INA, that permits more robust examinations of the employer's use of H-1B workers than are ordinarily undertaken. No previous Secretary of Labor has ever exercised this authority. President Trump has directed the Secretary of Labor to make use of the enforcement power in his June 22nd proclamation. So, between the memorandums of understanding, it's going to allow the DOL to do the work to carry out those policies. In addition, the MOA sets procedures for the exchange of data and responsibilities on the use, retention, maintenance, destruction, safeguarding of data. Information sharing is intended to support the administration of the U.S.'s immigration law and to combat fraud and abuse in the immigration system. Since the beginning of the pandemic, President Trump has taken steps to ensure that American workers are well positioned to return to work as soon as jobs come back online, says the Secretary of Labor, Eugene Scalia. Quote, the agreement signed today protects American workers by giving the Department of Labor an important new ability to launch investigations of potential fraud and abuse in the H-1B system. The MOA supersedes and replaces an older one that didn't have near as much authority. The departments are going to review it annually. So this is a big deal. There's a lot of changes there. The bottom line you need to know is that H-1B visas are going to have a much higher level of scrutiny. Offshoring, so replacing American workers with foreign workers, by, say, hiring call centers in India, are going to get new scrutiny under the Department of Labor. We don't know what that means yet, but in the next 120 days, we'll see what that looks like. It's not going to say you can't do it, I promise. But what it is going to say things is like probably provide additional protections for those employees who are laid off under circumstances like that. We'll have more details to come. If you are someone who uses H-1B visas currently, and many of our clients do, please take a very close look at your documentation along your H-1B visa where you did an economic impact study and those sort of things, because you may get a knock at the door and require those to be turned over quickly. My name is Rami Alijal. I know this was a little bit more esoteric than most of our episodes, but this is a change very much in how these departments talk to one another. I-9 violations are also something you should take a close look at, as additional investigations under these things will lead to more scrutiny in all of the immigration-related DOL stuff. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe at peopleprocesses.com. There's a lot of links in this podcast where you can read more in depth, links to the actual executive orders. Thank you for tuning in. Now it's time for you to go out there, have a great day, and get your work done.